Picture this: a passenger jet climbing through dense rain clouds over Lisbon, Portugal. In the cockpit, 3 experienced pilots are flying what should be a routine ferry flight, just a quick hop to pick up fuel before the long journey home to Kazakhstan. But something is terribly wrong. The aircraft begins swaying side to side, its movements growing more violent with each passing second, metal groaning and creaking under stress that it was never designed to endure. The autopilot refuses to engage. So stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for some extreme turbulence, because this is final boarding call.
Dance party, dance party, dance.
Hello and welcome to Final Boarding Call. I am your disaster-obsessed host, Alice.
And I'm Zach. Still just Zach. Don't mind me.
You're here for a good time, not a long time.
She's only saying that because I got a decent sunburn today. And now all of a sudden all she's talking about is how I'm about to die.
You can't leave me.
This woman's addicted, guys.
I am. I love you. Before we dive in, quick reminder, please rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We have merch available on our website, finalboardingcallpodcast.com.
Buy that.
Whoa. And actually, we got a lovely email from somebody this week who did buy one of our shirts, and she said that the quality was exceptional.
Love that.
She was very pleased. So, yeah, that's great.
Let's be realistic. If I like a shirt, everybody else is going to like the shirt. I'm pretty OCD about my shirts.
Zach's very shirt picky.
I don't like vinyl printed shirts. It's uncomfortable. Like, it feels weird. And no, we have good shirts.
We've got good shirts.
Hello from the guinea pigs.
Guinea pigs, say hi.
Hate them.
The sources include the official investigation report, and then we've got a Mentor pilot mini air crash investigation, both of those on YouTube. And then we've got a Wired article, Simple Flying article. You guys know where to find all the sources. It's in the show notes. Let's dive in. October 2nd, 2018. An Embraer. That's a dumb word. Anyways, it's an ERJ 190 regional jet, and it is painted in the livery of Air Astana, taxis to a halt at Alverca Air Base, which is a military airfield about 12 miles north of Lisbon. For those unfamiliar with this aircraft, the Embraer 190 is a Brazilian-made workhorse designed to carry around 97 passengers on shorter routes. So think of it as the reliable connector between smaller cities and major hubs. Air Astana is Kazakhstan's flag carrier, founded in 2001 and, remarkably, had never experienced a fatal accident in its first 17 years of operation.
It's pretty phenomenal.
Amazing. But Kazakhstan doesn't have facilities certified to perform heavy maintenance on these aircraft. So when this plane needed major work, it was sent to OGMA, OGMA, which is a Portuguese maintenance company with all the proper European Aviation Safety Agency certifications.
And probably way more death tolls.
Yeah. The aircraft was scheduled for a C-check, which is a comprehensive annual inspection where technicians examine hundreds of systems, replace worn components, and ensure that everything exceeds and meets safety standards. Really, it has to meet. I'd like for it to exceed. But this check had extra work. Embraer had issued service bulletins calling for upgrades to the aileron control system. Let me explain what ailerons are. because they are about to become the stars of our horror show. Ailerons are those movable surfaces on the outer trailing edges of the wings, the parts that hinge up and down. When you want to bank left, the left aileron goes up and the right aileron goes down, creating different amounts of lift on each wing, causing the aircraft to roll. It is one of the primary ways that pilots control the aircraft. Here's what makes this particular aircraft interesting. The Embraer 190 is a hybrid. What? Some flight controls use fly-by-wire technology, where your input converts to electronic signals that tell hydraulic actuators what to do. So that's like most of our recent stories are that. You know, we talk about like the hydraulic pressure issues, blah, 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 blah. And most of them are fly-by-wire technology.
You know what? Actually, curiosity for our listeners. Somebody's going to know the answer to this, and I don't feel like Googling it right now. Are they running off of a 12-volt system on planes, or is it all like 120? I don't know how planes are wired up. Obviously, they have the higher voltage plug-ins because you can charge your stuff. You can plug in your regular wall plugs from a house. But I don't know what the system is on. Do they have converters?
Oh, this is fun.
I'm curious.
Well, I've got good news because we've got really smart listeners, much smarter than me. So I know that we'll get an email back because somebody, I haven't showed you this yet, somebody emailed us about knots because in one of the episodes you were like,
oh, I don't know the
I don't
conversion.
understand knots. So they sent me like a whole thing on understanding knots.
All that and whatnot.
Boy. Okay. So some of the flight controls use fly-by-wire technology, but the ailerons, they are old school. Actual steel cables and pulleys, like a sophisticated bicycle brake system. When the pilot moves the control yoke, steel cables physically pull the aileron surfaces through a series of pulleys. Old school, baby.
I love that. I have people ask me all the time because I converted my car to drive-by cable instead of drive-by-wire. And it is less efficient. It doesn't work as well. And everybody's like, well, why would you do that? And I said, because I can see it. I can see it if it breaks. I know the problem, but I can't see the wire sending voltage.
We love it. We're big fans here. On October 9th, technicians began replacing these aileron cables with newer, more corrosion-resistant versions, which is good. If you're going to have this system, you don't want corrosion. Almost immediately, they ran into problems. Embraer's instructions were confusing, much like putting together an IKEA lamp.
Ugh.
The diagrams were very complex, difficult to interpret, and lacked clear photographic references. Making matters worse, AGMA had recently experienced significant staff turnover. The people doing the work were certified, but certification and practical experience are not the same thing.
Like college versus having a job.
So true. So true. God, I graduated and was not qualified to do anything. By October 17th, the cable replacement was complete. The technicians powered up the aircraft to run operational tests. And that's when things got weird. A warning message appeared on the EICAS, the EICAS, EICAS, the engine indicating and crew alerting system. And this is what popped up. Flight control, no dispatch. So in plain English, flight control problem, do not fly this plane.
And like, that's weird. Everything seems to be working. Fly it.
It's just like when your check engine light comes on, you just put a little tape over that light and you're like, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's a warning, okay?
Modern aircraft are incredibly complex machines with thousands of interconnected systems. A flight control warning could be triggered by dozens of issues: a sensor malfunction, a computer glitch, incorrect data, hydraulic problems, electrical issues. So the maintenance team began troubleshooting. And they did troubleshooting on everything except the one thing that was actually wrong.
Which was probably the thing that they just replaced.
They ran diagnostic tests on flight control computers. They checked wiring and electrical connections, and they verified hydraulic pressures. Every single thing they did came back normal. The warning appeared again on Halloween, October 31st. More troubleshooting followed. Days turned into weeks. Finally, frustrated and running out of ideas, AGMA reached out to Embraer for help. On November 6, a technical representative flew in from Amsterdam. I know. Taking a little holiday in Portugal? God, I'm jealous of all of these places. After several more days of testing, they decided to replace all 4 flight control modules. These are the computers managing the fly-by-wire systems. The warning message disappeared.
Lovely.
Every diagnostic test came back normal. But here is the truly terrifying part. At no point during weeks of troubleshooting did anyone actually watch what the ailerons were doing when pilots were moving the controls in the cockpit. They tested computers, they tested wiring, they tested hydraulics, but they never verified that turning the control yoke left actually made the ailerons move to bank the aircraft left.
Was this going to be another one where everything was inverted?
We're about to dive into it. November 11th, 2018. It dawned overcast and rainy in Portugal. Air Astana dispatched a crew to fly their Embraer home, first to Minsk, Belarus, for refueling, then on to Almaty, Kazakhstan. It was a ferry flight moving an empty aircraft, right, with no paying passengers aboard. We just got to get aircraft from A to B.
And C.
And then C. The crew consisted of 3 pilots: 40-year-old Captain Vyacheslav Aushev.
Crushed it.
Thank you. With over 6,000 flight hours. 32-year-old First Officer Borzan Kurashelikov. That felt right. With 2,692 hours. And 26-year-old First Officer Sergei Sokolov, riding in the jump seat with 3,514 hours. Joining them in the cabin were 3 Air Astana maintenance engineers who had come to inspect the completed work. So we got maintenance engineers on the flight, which is kind of cool.
Seems strange, but, probably good for... They had big issues and they just wanted to verify everything's good.
Yeah, this plane is being very high maintenance. During pre-flight checks, pilots are supposed to verify that all flight controls move correctly. On the Embraer 190, as you move the control yoke, you watch a display screen showing a diagram of the control surfaces, confirming they're moving in the right direction. That's kind of crazy. And if they'd looked carefully at that screen,
they'd see it was backwards.
When they turned the yoke left, the computer showed the right aileron going up and the left aileron going down.
Called it.
Backwards. But they didn't catch it. And maybe it was the stress of earlier delays. Maybe it was the weather. And maybe just the routine nature of a straightforward ferry flight. But whatever the reason, they missed it. And at 1:31 p.m., Air Astana Flight 1388 lined up on runway 4 and began its takeoff roll. As the plane lifted into the gray, rain-soaked skies, the 6 people aboard had no idea that they were about to experience the most terrifying 2 hours of their lives.
You know, me thinking about that, I feel like once you realized what it was doing, it's actually not that difficult to reprogram backwards. Like, I could absolutely move a steering rack in a car and extend the column a little bit. And if I moved it to the front when it was a rear mounted, all of a sudden everything is opposite. And I think I could figure that out.
Wait, didn't that happen to somebody? Didn't we watch an Instagram video of somebody that did that? They were like turning the steering wheel and then everything was going the other direction.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all.
We watched that. For about 30 seconds after takeoff, everything seemed normal. The Embraer climbed steadily through low clouds, visibility limited by heavy rain. Captain Alshev was hand flying the aircraft, standard procedure during takeoff and initial climb. Then, slowly at first, the aircraft began swaying from side to side. Alshev made small corrections, trying to keep the wings level, but instead of smoothing out, the oscillations grew stronger. He tried to engage the autopilot, let the computer just take over, but it refused to activate. Error message, autopilot fail. Yeah, the computer's like, I'm not dealing with this. Not today.
That is not my job.
No way. And that is when the real trouble began. As Alshev tried to correct the increasing roll oscillations, the aircraft suddenly lurched into a steep left bank. He turned the yoke to level the wings, the same motion that he had made thousands of times in his career to correct an airplane. But instead of responding correctly, the aircraft really rolled to the left.
Got more drama filled.
Within 2 minutes of takeoff, the aircraft flipped completely inverted and began diving toward the ground. 2 minutes in. The altimeter unwound so rapidly it was almost unreadable. The ground proximity warning system began screaming, pull up, pull up.
But don't do that because it'll push you down.
Alshev pulled back on the controls. The G-forces were crushing. 4.5 Gs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pinning them to their seats, making the aircraft structure creak and groan, pushing right up against the design limits. In less than a minute, they plummeted over 1,000 feet before somehow, miraculously, recovering to level flight. What?
He was like, this isn't working. Try the opposite.
Oh my goodness. Our captain, who is performing miracles right now, he keyed his radio. Mayday, mayday, mayday. We have flight control problems. I would say so. Over the next few minutes, the increasingly desperate radio calls painted a picture of complete chaos. They requested an immediate return. They asked for vectors to the sea for a possible water landing. And then came the call that sent chills through everyone listening in the control tower. Airplane is completely uncontrollable. 3 experienced professional pilots, men who have spent thousands of hours in cockpits, trained for every emergency scenario, telling air traffic control that their aircraft will not respond to their commands. Inside the cabin, the 3 maintenance engineers were experiencing their own nightmare. These weren't just regular passengers. These were licensed aircraft technicians who understood exactly what was happening. At 4.8 Gs, which is what they hit, their bodies felt like they weighed nearly 800 pounds. One engineer...
Tell me his name. This is my favorite part of this podcast, I think.
Kaluzny felt his leg pinned by G-forces so heavy that it was like a car sitting on his lap. His ankle sprained from the sheer force of his own limb being thrown against the aircraft structure.
That'd be an interesting feeling.
Unlike regular passengers, they could see through the windows what was actually happening. The ailerons were moving in the wrong direction relative to what they heard the pilots commanding from the cockpit. When the plane rolled inverted for the second time, they stopped trying to help and they just simply braced for impact. Several were actively vomiting from severe spatial disorientation.
I could see that.
Can't blame you. In the cockpit, the pilots were fighting for their lives. Every time they thought that they had the aircraft stabilized, they would suddenly roll over and enter another dive. The vertical speed indicator swung wildly between climbing 20,000 feet per minute and descending 20,000 feet per minute.
20,000 a minute?
20,000 feet per minute.
That's a wild number.
They are either going straight up or straight down. 4.8 Gs over and over again. That is a roller coaster from hell. And at one point, they pulled 5 Gs. Too many Gs. Blood drains from your brain toward your feet when you are hitting Gs like that. Your vision starts to tunnel. Most people would black out.
Yeah.
These forces weren't just affecting the pilots. They were tearing at every bolt, rivet, and structural joint of the aircraft. I mean, this is a plane that was not designed to do these sorts of things. But the pilots never gave up. About a minute into the emergency, someone had a very crucial idea. The Embraer 190 has 2 modes for its flight control system. In normal mode, computers adjust your inputs to give smooth, predictable handling. Ooh, it's like a hill assist on a manual car. Oh, we'll just hold you here so you can gracefully move forward. But there's also direct mode, where inputs go more or less straight to the control surfaces without any computer intervention. And they switched to direct mode. Oh, poor baby.
That's exactly what I would do.
And it didn't solve the problem, but it did help a little.
Well, and it gives them input feeling.
You gotta feel it. The aircraft became slightly more predictable, though still terrifyingly difficult to control. Meanwhile, First Officer Sokolov had another idea. He called back to the 3 maintenance engineers in the cabin. Over the intercom, through the chaos, he asked them to look through the maintenance documentation. What had been done to this demon aircraft?
This thing is haunted. Tell me what's going on.
The engineers, despite being thrown around and vomiting, they began flipping through paperwork, and there it was. Aileron cables replaced.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I know that you can't even sit in your seat still, but go ahead and read this paperwork.
I can't even read in a car when it's just driving on the highway. But I guess if my life depended on it,
you'd figure it out.
I would figure it out.
Yep.
One of the engineers timed his movements between brief moments of level flight, darting through the cockpit door before it could swing shut and latch itself during the next roll. Crazy. He needed to look out the passenger windows, though, and watch the ailerons while the pilots made control inputs. On one attempt, the aircraft rolled violently just as he moved forward, and it slammed him against the bulkhead. It sprained his already injured ankle. Now it's super sprained.
Double sprain.
But he kept trying, he kept watching, and he kept reporting back, and his observations confirmed their worst fears. The ailerons were moving backwards. In the cockpit, the realization hit like a hammer. The cockpit voice recorder captures this moment. Quote, "It's not responding, it's going the other way." That's what our captain said. "I'm turning left, it's going right." First officer. "Look at the ailerons. Why are they doing that? The controls are reversed. They're reversed." Now, you might think, okay, they have figured it out. Mission accomplished, just do the opposite. Turn right when you want to go left. Here's why that's not going to work, Zach, because I know that's what you're thinking, and it's what you said earlier.
It's in my head.
But it's not going to work, because the Embraer 190 is a hybrid aircraft.
Oh, so it has the electronic input too, and that is trying to do things the right way.
The ailerons use old-fashioned cables, but there is another system that also controls roll. The flight spoilers, which are panels that pop up from the wing's top surface to spoil the lift on one side. The spoilers are fly-by-wire, controlled by computers, and they were working perfectly normally. So, what you had was this. The pilots would command a right roll, the spoilers would deploy correctly to roll right, but the ailerons would move to roll left. Ha!
So it like stalls out one wing and just makes the opposite roll more dramatic.
It's insane. The two systems were fighting each other, creating completely unpredictable behavior. There is no fix this by doing the opposite. And by this point, they'd been airborne for over an hour.
Oh.
The fact that we have even gotten to this point, unbelievable flying. The aircraft had gone completely inverted at least twice, performed multiple extreme dives, and subjected its occupants to G-forces far beyond what the human body is designed to handle.
I know that they didn't have any passengers on that, but imagine being the passenger on that.
Fuck
and
no.
You're just like, again?
Nope, I'm out. I hope I would just black out. I mean, that's like, I don't
let me just try to
participate.
sleep through this.
I don't want to participate in this. The flight data recorder captured forces that exceeded the aircraft's design limits multiple times. Some parts experiencing stresses 20 to 50% beyond what they were designed to withstand. The metal skin was starting to ripple and wrinkle. The metal.
This whole plane is going to be useless after this.
Oh, fucking burn it. The wing leading edges were deforming, and the aircraft was literally tearing itself apart midair. But armed with their new understanding, the pilots could start adapting. Through painstaking trial and error, they discovered that if they made absolutely tiny inputs on the controls, millimeters of movement, they could use the reversed ailerons without triggering the spoilers.
Nice. Okay.
It required incredible precision and a feather-light touch, especially given the stress and physical exhaustion from fighting the G-forces. They also figured out that keeping the flaps partially extended gave them more stability. So yes, having flaps out at a higher speed risked damaging them, but they were already flying a plane that was coming apart. So they were sort of just like, meh, fuck it. Around this time, roughly an hour and 15 minutes into the ordeal, two Portuguese Air Force F-16 fighter jets scrambled to intercept them.
You see it in movies and all that stuff, and I'm just like, what do? You just fly next to them to watch them, whatever happens?
I don't know. I think it always raises security concerns. Whenever a plane is like acting erratically, you just always have to
question if it was hijacked or anything like that.
A little bit. Yeah. Because the pilots could be saying anything.
Yeah.
Right? And anyway, that's what they were checking out. They were making sure that this was not some sort of attack. The F-16 pilots reported seeing an airliner performing maneuvers that should not be possible for a commercial aircraft. Once they got close enough to see the pilots struggling with the controls, the fighters transitioned from interceptors to guardians. There was a grim understanding among the military pilots. If the crew lost total control over a residential area, the F-16s were positioned to ensure the plane didn't hit the city.
So like they would take the hit or bump or whatever and try to redirect it?
It's a calculation that no pilot wants to make, but it's one that they were prepared for. By now, the crew had managed to fly east and then south, away from the worst weather. They broke out of the clouds into clearer conditions, which helped immensely. They could finally see the horizon and use visual references instead of relying solely on instruments. Air traffic control suggested they divert to Baza Air Base, a Portuguese military airfield with good weather and long runways. Hey,
okay,
we'll take it.
That.
We'll take it, baby. The F-16s would escort them there, acting as chase planes to provide external altitude and speed callouts because the Embraer's instruments were just fucked at this point. Captain Ashev, First Officer Kurashelikov, and First Officer Sokolov prepared for the most difficult landing of their careers. Baza Air Base sits in the Alentejo region of southern Portugal, surrounded by golden wheat fields and cork oak forests. Emergency vehicles lined the runway. They're like,
it's gonna go bad.
Crews watching the sky for the crippled Embraer being guided in by the F-16s. The plan was to fly a visual approach to runway 19, lining up with the runway by sight and gradually descending until touchdown. What a lovely plan, right?
Just plans work all the time.
Yeah, no. Like, I know, that's insane. Can you just line up real quick and just gracefully set yourself down? They gave it an old college try. So as they descended, Captain Ashev fought to keep the aircraft on course using those tiny, precise inputs. But as they got lower and closer to the ground, the Embraer began swaying side to side again, drifting off the center line. The fishtailing was getting worse. So Ashev made a call that took tremendous courage. Go around.
Yeah,
we need
abort,
to regroup.
Try again.
They'd abort. And they were going to try again. The aircraft climbed away, the pilots wrestling with the controls again, because now they're gaining altitude, but something else was happening in the cockpit. First Officer Kurashelikov, who had been fighting alongside Ashev through the entire ordeal, was at his limit. The physical toll of the G-forces, the psychological stress of the near-death experience, the nausea from all of the violent maneuvers, it became too much. And the cockpit voice recorder captures his breakdown. "I can't feel my arms," Captain Ashev said. "You take it for a second." "I have control. Switching now," Sokolov replied in the jump seat. "Careful, careful. Don't let the nose drop. Okay, I'm in the right seat. I have control." So they're flying a crippled aircraft that is it's actively trying to kill them multiple times.
They're definitely low on fuel by this point.
Yep. And they are switching who's in the co-pilot seat. The CVR picks up heavy breathing and the audible clack of control columns hitting their mechanical limits as they perform this swap while the aircraft is doing its thing, and not in like a fun way. Sokolov climbed into the co-pilot seat, strapping in, and immediately began helping prepare for the second approach. So once again, we are lining up with runway 19 right. Once again, they descended. The F-16s are keeping watch. And once again, as they get close, the aircraft begins fishtailing. The direct mode they'd switched to earlier had changed the handling characteristics so dramatically that they could not stabilize the approach enough to even land safely. So once again,
Go around.
And for the third attempt, Captain Ashev made a crucial decision. They wouldn't touch the ailerons at all. Not even the tiny inputs they'd been using. Instead, they would steer using only the rudder.
Foot pedal for the win.
This is clever and incredibly difficult. The rudder is the vertical control surface on the tail that normally makes the aircraft's nose point left or right. But if you're in a bank and you apply rudder, you can use it to help control direction. It's like steering a boat. If you tilted to one side and you point the rudder where you want to go, you can guide the aircraft.
Sounds correct to me.
The downside is that it is not very precise. It's like trying to draw a straight line while you're wearing oven mitts. Let's do this thing. Third approach. Ashev demonstrated exceptional skill, using just the rudder and tiny adjustments to power. He guided the Embraer toward runway 19 right. The F-16 pilots were calling out altitude and speed over the radio, which is critical information since all the instruments are just like red flag, abort everything. And at the last moment, the aircraft drifted left, heading away from runway 19 right. They were too low to attempt another go-around safely. And in that split second, Ashev saw their salvation. Runway 19 left.
They're almost there.
Parallel runway just to their left. It was narrower. It was meant for smaller aircraft, but it was a runway.
It is the
only.
And
at this point, so he literally called out, we're taking 19 left. And at 3:27 p.m., 1 hour and 56 minutes after taking off, the wheels of Flight 1388 touched down on runway 19 left. They did it. They freaking did it. The landing was not pretty. The aircraft came in crabbed, flying essentially sideways.
Sounds right.
With the wheels not aligned with the direction of travel. It swerved, crushing 5 runway edge lights as it chewed across the pavement toward the left side. Ashev stood on the brakes, fighting to keep the aircraft from sliding into the grass. The impact was so hard it caused structural damage to the fuselage and landing gear. But it slowed. It straightened out. And then it stopped.
And these captains are like, I don't care if I lose my job. I don't care if this plane goes to scrap. I'm finally down.
Wow. Almost immediately, a message appeared on the EICAS, the ICAS display. The same message maintenance had been chasing for weeks. Flight control, no dispatch.
By the way, guys, there's a problem with your plane.
It's too late to apologize. All 6 people that were on that plane were alive. And aside from the sprained ankle and people that were suffering from extreme nausea and motion sickness, God, I feel for them, everyone was physically okay. They didn't use emergency slides. They were literally able to exit from stairs and ladders. And when they finally stepped off the plane, witnesses described the pilots as ashen-faced, shaking so hard they could barely hold a pen to sign the manifest.
Mm.
All 6 were taken to a hospital for treatment and extreme shock and injuries from the high G maneuvers. The aircraft, however, was not okay.
'Twas worse for wear.
When maintenance inspectors examined it over the following days, they found extensive damage through the structure. The wings were permanently bent upward at the tips. They were warped from the G-forces.
I believe it.
The skin panels were wrinkled, which is crazy to like think about and visualize an airplane with wrinkled metal panels. The flaps were damaged, and even the engines showed signs of stress. Measurements revealed that multiple sections had been subjected to forces that were way beyond what they were designed to do. Damage exceeded 150% of design load limits. This aircraft would never fly straight again, and it was written off, eventually scrapped in 2021. Set it on fire.
Yeah.
So, how the hell did we get here? Because it's crazy.
Well, they routed to the bottom of a pulley instead of the top and didn't realize that was changing things.
Would you say they got their cables crossed?
No, because they go to opposite sides of the aircraft. But
okay, whatever. Once everyone was safe, investigators from Portugal's Accident Investigation Agency descended to examine what had gone wrong. When they examined the cable routing in the wings, they immediately found the problem. Near the mounting points for new support structures installed during maintenance, the cables for up and down movement of the ailerons had been swapped. Zach was right. It was that simple. The cable that should have pulled the aileron up was connected to the one that pulled it down. And vice versa. Beep bop, beep boop. God, it reminds me of the time that the hoses got swapped during a coolant, like basic coolant fluid flush that I had done
car?
On my Subaru, and it overheated nonstop. And I was like, what is happening? And literally the solution was just unplugging two different hoses and swapping. How could professional maintenance technicians make such a basic mistake? And how could it go undetected through weeks of troubleshooting? The answer, as is so often the case in aviation disasters, was not one simple failure. It was a chain of smaller failures that lined up to create catastrophe.
Swiss cheese.
Swiss cheese, baby. First, Embraer's maintenance manual instructions for this job
are garbage.
Are dookie. The diagrams were complex and confusing. There weren't enough photographs or illustrations showing how cables should be routed.
Yeah, guys, we all love a picture book.
Yes, and when people need to guess or make assumptions during aircraft maintenance, not okay. Not okay. I want a picture for like every single thing you are supposed to do.
You want to picture this?
I do want to picture this. And making matters worse, the spot where cables crossed was in an area recently modified with new structural supports. So the relative orientation of the cables changed near these supports, making it even harder to visualize which cable should go where. Because not only was the illustration wrong, but now the parts that you are connecting it to are different. I mean, like, no. An experienced technician who had done this job many times may have been able to recognize that something was wrong just by looking at it. But AGMA had recently experienced massive turnover. So we didn't have the luxury.
You had a lot of brand new C-Techs.
And, exactly, Zach. And the investigation found that AGMA had serious problems with its quality control systems. There was inadequate supervision of maintenance work. Technicians didn't feel comfortable reporting problems or asking for help. A lack of what is called just culture in aviation safety. The competency assessment system wasn't catching knowledge gaps. People were being certified to work on aircraft systems that they did not understand. But the mistakes didn't stop with the cable installation. Remember how the maintenance team spent weeks troubleshooting that flight control no dispatch warning? At no point did anyone think to do the most basic check. Actually watch the ailerons while someone in the cockpit moved the controls.
And also, guys, as a many year mechanic, whether it's planes, trains, or automobiles, if you are having an issue and you just replace something, the odds are that something else didn't fail. Whatever you just did is wrong. I don't know why that's so hard for people to get.
100%. Best example of this, Zach had a customer bring an Audi to him, and the same day that he brought it to Zach, he had just gotten the windshield replaced.
Oh, yeah, that was a nightmare, actually.
That one was so insane. But basically the car, correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, but it was like doing very unusual things that it should not have been doing. And it was becoming a nightmare to diagnose.
Yeah. I mean, it's an unusual system, but changing ride height for this car, they have sensors for it. Well, those sensors are programmed into the automatic lane departure and cruise control, all the fancy stuff the cars have now. So you have to basically have an alignment with your windshield so it can calibrate for lane departure and lane changes. And it was an aftermarket windshield, which sounds silly, but it's still just a clear piece of glass, but it doesn't calibrate the same. And it throws off the sensors for the ride height and makes it to where you can't get the ride height the same when you're trying to manipulate it.
Unbelievable. But that was the thing that got changed that day. Mm-hmm. And it was like all of the issues, even though they made no sense and logically were not correlated to that thing at all, they all had to do with the windshield.
And of course, I don't get to deal with it right away. I get the cleanup. Somebody else swapped it and he's had issues with it ever since.
So part of all of this was due to another inadequacy in the maintenance documentation. So the manual had operational test procedures that showed a synoptic display, a graphical representation of flight controls. If you ran this test and all components were electrically connected, the display showed everything in green. The manual wasn't clear that showing green meant the test conditions are met. Not necessarily the test passed and everything is great. Put this thing in the sky. The technicians, seeing green indicators, assumed that everything was fine. They'd confirmed the wires were connected, not that they were connected correctly.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a fundamental issue with how troubleshooting was approached. Modern aviation maintenance tends to focus on electronic and computer systems first. So they tested everything that has to do with a computer. And when all those tests passed, they were like, great, we're ready to go. Nobody actually thought about the physical cable. Following this brutal investigation, all parties involved made sweeping changes. Air Astana implemented stricter oversight of maintenance contractors and created special procedures for pilots accepting aircraft after heavy maintenance, which I think is huge. Huge. Embraer improved its maintenance manuals with clearer illustrations and instructions. Hooray! Changed service bulletin procedures to avoid situations where both aileron cables would need to be disconnected simultaneously, because that is how things get swapped accidentally. If you just have like free wires going. And they began developing warning systems that could detect reversed cables during ground tests. But perhaps the most significant consequences fell on AGMA. The company faced a massive restructuring. While they didn't lose their certification permanently, Embraer sent shadow teams, independent inspectors, to oversee their heavy maintenance for a significant period. They were grounded. Air Astana sued AGMA for the loss of the aircraft.
I mean, that's millions of dollars.
With the settlement estimated in the tens of millions of dollars. Spot on, Zach. The company completely overhauled its quality control systems, brought in external consultants to improve its safety culture, and it implemented more rigorous competency assessments.
Honestly, there's a part of me that wishes that existed for automotive mechanics too, because it is, in the current system, extremely hard to point blame at a shop who might have done wrongdoing to your vehicle. If something happened, most of the time you're just kind of SOL, because it's hard to prove that this was exactly because of their work.
It's true. So Zach, before we wrap this episode up, I just need to give major kudos and tell you what ended up happening to these incredible pilots that were involved in this, because this is a situation and a story where everyone should have died. Everybody should have died.
Or at least very easily could have.
Yeah, no one did. They were flying under a situation and circumstances that are just unbelievable. So they were granted indefinite leave. All 3 pilots were deeply affected by this ordeal, obviously.
I mean, they thought 10 times during this flight at least, oh my gosh, this is it, I'm dead.
100%. There were physical injuries, obviously. There were psychological scars, and recovery took months. But eventually, all 3 returned. They returned.
As they do.
That's what they do. In 2019, they received the Order of Valor, which is Kazakhstan's highest honor for bravery. They were hailed as national heroes. Some later transitioned to training and management roles using this incident. Holy shit, what a great thing to have under your belt as a trainer. Wow. And for their actions that day, they were also awarded the Kazakh Aviator Medal. But beyond the individual heroism, this incident revealed something more troubling. How many opportunities there were to catch this error, but Swiss cheese, baby. Swiss cheese. All right. The damaged Embraer, registration P4 KCJ, was sold for scrap, which Zach and I know all about, selling stuff for scrap. Can you imagine towing an airplane in? You know, the scrapyard guy's like, I don't know, $34. It's a funny image because Zach and I have dropped off so many cars for scrap, and I'm picturing like a friggin' airplane.
Yeah, scrap prices are low, folks.
Oh, it's rough out there. Well, I didn't mean to end on scrap prices. I meant to end on like the incredible heroism of our 3 pilots. So that's where we're going to end. And Zach, that is our story for today. And what a story it was.
Well, we love a happy story. Everybody survived. They get to move on with their lives.
Man, we need it. We so need it. And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are on social media. We don't post there, but feel free to message us. We love seeing those. You can always email us at finalboardingcallpodcast@gmail.com. I read and respond to all of those, and we'll send you stickers. And join us next time when we will be exploring another transportation disaster story. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because not every trip reaches its final destination.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, friends.